All right, we are talking to Connor Fitzgerald. He's the head coach at Olathe South. So get a little Kansas flavor in here
Yeah,
for our
buddy.
coaching talks for once. So just jump right into a few topics. But starting off, Corona, it's really killing everybody's vibe this spring and summer. But what would you suggest kids could do for training, if anything, right now?
Well, they just got to find a way, in my opinion. Like, it's never going to be ideal right now, yeah, you can't get into your high school wrestling room. Yeah, you can't get into the weight room. You can't get into a gym. Um, but no one's stopping you from pounding the pavement, going on runs, from doing stance and motion, push ups, pull ups. You got to get creative. So, I mean, I think the people who find a way to train still during this time of uncertainty are going to find that they have an edge when we kind of get back to the real world.
Yeah. I know Jesse wanted to ask you some questions. We like to give people a little insight into the different journeys people have gone in
Sure,
wrestling. So,
sure.
So we talked the other day to Connor Brown, and he's transferred a couple times now, and he wound up at Mizzou.
Yeah.
So I just wanted you to kind of go through your journey through college a little bit, and kind of all your different steps from starting at UCM, and you know where you went, came back, and then deciding to go home to finish school, and then even making one more move to UMKC at that point, just because I think that kids need to know that, it happens.
Yeah.
And everybody's got their own way through it. But I wanted you to kind of like talk through that process a little bit, and
Sure.
kind of the logic behind some of them, the moves. So.
So coming out of high school, like I was a kid who I had pretty minimal wrestling experience coming into high school. Um, I was I had some athletic ability, some physical gifts, but I was pretty raw. And I had a high school coach who really took me under his wing, um, uh, made me better by leaps and bounds. And he was really more than a coach. He's like part of my family. So we had a really, really tight relationship. And I think that was something that I just thought maybe I took it for granted. Um, but I thought that, at the next level, that was just going to be the case with my college coach. So going to Central, I loved the location. It was close to home. I had a good visit, and I just, they gave me a good scholarship offer, and I thought this will be a good fit, and Coach Ursland and I will have that tight relationship. Um, and that wasn't really the case initially in my first year at Central. The transition from high school to college is really, really tough. And I still had a ton of room to grow and develop as a wrestler. So I was taking my lumps and then some my freshman year. And it was just kind of a thing that, I had gone from feeling pretty good about myself and pretty successful to really questioning what I was doing anymore. And then it all kind of fell back on my relationship with my coach. I didn't feel like there was that connection there. So me and two other
Hey,
teammates.
real quick, just for the
Yeah.
record, can you tell everyone who you got your red shirt pulled for to wrestle?
Yeah, that wasn't a lot of fun. So I was trying to redshirt my freshman year, and that was the plan. I didn't want to challenge. I didn't want to wrestle off for the spot. I just wanted to wrestle in opens and try to get better. But the week of our duel against Missouri, I got my red shirt pulled to wrestle Tyrone Woodley. Um, so that wasn't a lot of fun. It wasn't an ideal way to pull your red shirt, but whatever. It's a good story now.
It is a good story. So, all right, sorry. Continue.
So me and two of our teammates from Central, Greg and Kyle Wog, we kind of decided we were going to go somewhere else to continue our wrestling career. So we went and visited McKendree up in Illinois, and it was a way better fit at that time in my life as far as wrestling goes. So, I was all on board. So the three of us transferred there. Coach Kisgan, fantastic coach. One of the most knowledgeable wrestling coaches I've ever been around. Um, so the wrestling aspect when we went to McKendree, it was an upgrade. Like I was really enjoying the wrestling, but the school was tiny. The whole school was smaller than my graduating class, and I was 5 hours away from home. So, the wrestling aspect of my life was better, but everything else didn't didn't fit. And I got homesick. I just wasn't really into living in Lebanon, Illinois anymore. So after that year, I was like, you know what? I loved everything about Central besides the wrestling. Maybe I'll just go be a student. So the three of us transferred back to Central. Um, and that year, I transferred twice from 4-year universities. So you have to sit a year. Um, so I was like, I guess I'm just going to not wrestle. But that year was probably the toughest year of my life. Um, I think I figured out how bad I needed wrestling in my life. Um, I was just kind of lost without it. I didn't have structure. I lost discipline. Um, I just wasn't the person I wanted to be in that year between. So I went and I asked Coach Ursuline if he would have me back, if he'd let me back on the team. And he agreed to. So he said, I'm not going to give you your scholarship back. And I said, I don't care. I'll take out loans. I need wrestling. And this is the place that I want to be. So he let me back on the team. Um, and then the next year was just kind of getting my feet back underneath me. Um, but going into my last year at Central, that was like when I rediscovered my love for wrestling, for just training and trying to get better. So I really, from going from the year where I thought I was going to be done wrestling, that was going to be the end of my wrestling career, to how I finished. I'm so glad that I did. It kind of reignited something inside me and it reminded me who I am, kind of put me on the path to where I am today. And really, another thing that was a benefit was Coach Ursula and I ended up having a really good relationship. One that started out not so great, ended with a really good bond between he and I. And I think a lot of that guy. He cracks me up.
So then after you finish up, you
Oh yeah,
end
yeah,
up moving out of town, but you still have
yeah,
to finish at UCM.
yeah.
So you were
So
coming down like what, once a week? Because you had like one class you had to come down for, right?
well,
Or
initially I was gonna do that. I think I just came down to hang out with you guys.
you did, which is fine too, because I missed you guys because you guys all left, and so then it was
Right.
like me and a couple of the younger guys, and it was a lot different without you. But kind of go through that process of when you were coming back down, and I think this just gets into the school side of things now, where kids don't understand like what can happen just with the
Right.
school itself.
Right.
So yeah.
So when I had my last year of eligibility at Central, I was done wrestling. So after that, I still had like, I don't know, 4 or 5 classes and my student teaching left. Um, and in all honesty, it was probably time for me to get out of Warrensburg. Uh, I had gotten everything I needed to get out of that town. So once you took wrestling out of the equation, I knew that was kind of a recipe for disaster if I were to stay there. So, and honestly, I was ready for like the next stage of my life. I was ready to try to get a job, and I was ready to kind of officially grow up, if you will. So I moved back home. All my credits transferred, because they're both Missouri institutions. So all my credits transferred to UMKC. Um, and I just finished up my last couple classes, living at home with my parents. Um, I coached with my dad at Blue Valley West for 2 years. I coached football and I coached wrestling there. I did my student teaching there. Um, but kind of what you say, like the repercussions of all those transfers, I ended up graduating with like 160 something credits, and I needed like 120 something for my degree. So that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that I just kind of LeBron'd up into the sky there throughout my college career. But you know, it was a long, windy road, but I wouldn't change a thing about it. It all happened the way it was supposed to, and it's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today.
And so then you get done at UMKC, and then I think that me and you pretty much got our jobs within like almost a week of each other. It seemed like, I mean, it was like bang bang. We both got our jobs. So I got my job at Green Valley, and you got your job at Olathe South. And I was talking to James, and I was saying how I've always really liked to talk to you about what you've done with that program, because it's much different, like demographically, I guess, or just size wise, really. And so it's always been fun to watch what you've done with the team, and you know, kind of your evolution with them. So, and because I felt like our teams kind of started off in similar places.
Sure.
Maybe they weren't at their absolute best. They needed some work. So I just wanted you to kind of talk about tell us about the evolution of your team, while you've been there, and kind of just your approach to how you were going to build it up once you took over. So if you could just tell us about that.
Well, first I'd say that the feeling's mutual, buddy. I've always enjoyed following your career and how you've changed the program. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do in Arizona. I know it's going to be great. But for me, so Olathe South is my alma mater. That's where I went to school. And when I was in school, we had a real successful wrestling program. The highest the school had ever finished was 7th at the state tournament. And that was twice while I was in high school. And we were a top 10 team all 4 years that I was there. And then somewhere along the way, by the time I left and went off to school, and by the time I came back, some things had changed. I think some of the clientele had changed a little bit. And it was just different, So when I came back, I was 25 years old. I was in by no means ready to be a head coach, but at that point I needed a teaching job, so the opportunity presented itself, and I jumped at it. So that first year I was really in over my head. I'd been an assistant coach for 2 years, and I thought I knew what I was getting into, and I had no idea. I could coach wrestling, I could teach wrestling technique, but I mean, that's a small part of the job of a head coach, I came to find out. So really, our first couple of years, it was a big struggle. I think I was focused on a lot of the wrong things. I kind of forgotten what was so cool about being a coach. And I was really driven to kind of prove that I could do the job by winning more matches and, placing higher in tournaments and putting more kids on the podium. And it was my plans were really results driven. And so after those first couple of years, and I was pretty miserable. We weren't having very much success. I think we took 30th at the state tournament. And I was really kind of banging my head against the wall. I had to shift my perspective to the culture of our program, and just kind of let my guard down, and really seek to build relationships with kids, try to make them better human beings before I made them better wrestlers, and kind of put that at the top of the list of priorities is the character of our kids, and the culture of our program. And once I started doing that, it kind of, a couple things kind of combined for a perfect storm, but I changed my perspective and my approach to being a coach. And we had kind of an influx of some talent. So the first group of kids that I coached all 4 years, they'd really bought in to kind of our new approach to what we were going to do, and they were really good leaders. And then we got 2 super stud freshmen in that same year. And that year was just kind of the turning of the tide for us. Those guys, those two freshmen ended up being they're the top 1 and 2 most winning. They've won more matches than anyone in school history. So those guys combined for 4 state titles, 7 state medals. They were just outstanding. But they had really good examples of what leadership looks like for them when they were freshmen. So we just kind of continued that and continued focusing on, like I said, the character of the kids and the culture of the program, and really trying to make wrestling an aspect of who they were, who the kids were, and kind of shape their identity around it. Not based on whether they were having success on the mat or not, but just the traits that wrestling teaches kids and reinforces. I want them to be high character kids, give full effort, be consistent, be responsible, be respectful. All those things that I learned from the sport of wrestling, I wanted our kids to kind of pull those in and let them shape their identity. And to their credit, they bought into it. And kind of once we got things moving in that direction, it kind of fed upon itself. So that combined with huge investments in the spring and summertime, the Olympic styles is something that really changed me as a wrestler. I credit a lot of the success I've had to just investing in freestyle and Greco. So once we made a big push for that in the spring and summer with our kids, that's kind of been the game changer. The last 4 years, we've been in the top 10 at the state tournament. This year, we took 7th, so we matched the highest placing in school history. And that was we were planning on competing for a state title this year. We had a lot of firepower and a really quality lineup. But some things didn't go our way that weekend down in Wichita. One tough round kind of knocked us out of contending for a trophy into 7th place. But, again, that would be focusing on the results, right? Which is what I'm trying to get away from. So when I really took a step back and looked at it, our kids wrestled with, guts. They gave everything they had. They left it all out there, and they showed tremendous character throughout the tournament. So I couldn't be more proud of how we finished the year. We won the league tournament for the first time in over 25 years. We beat the state champs in our last duel of the season. So much good stuff came out of this season. And we're just really excited to get back to work whenever that may be.
I'm going to transition this to something since you brought it up, and I want to ask a question that's like it's a great question we can ask amongst Kansas City people because we're right on the border. But you got to wrestle in Missouri in college with Missouri guys. You coach in Kansas. So is there a difference between Missouri and Kansas wrestling?
In terms of style or like strength?
Style.
I think Missouri guys are better on the mat. I think Kansas we have a big emphasis on wrestling on our feet. And I think sometimes that's to our own detriment. I don't think we spend enough time working on, bottom, top, and bottom. So I think when we run into guys from Missouri, we see more of that, and then we get kind of exposed with our mat wrestling. So that, and I think a lot of Missouri kids are pretty good at, chain wrestling. And I see, like when we were at the Metro the other week or the other month, I don't know what day it is today. But I think I saw a lot of that. Guys from Missouri do a good job of chaining things together. And I think, as far as strength goes, I think that Missouri has been a little bit ahead, but I think Kansas is on the up and up. We just keep getting better. There's more investment statewide, year-round. So Kansas is on the climb. So I think that before long, Kansas and Missouri would be pretty neck and neck in terms of overall strength. It just kind of depends on what pockets of the state you're looking at. If we're in the Metro.
That's the interesting thing about Kansas. I feel like in Missouri, A lot of the strength is people that we see all spring and summer and are together a lot. And in Kansas, there's there's your group of guys that do stuff in the summer because they're concentrated in the city. And then there's little random other outliers that are very good at folk style wrestling, though, for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, the Wichita area, it pumps out hammers every year. You know, their kids are good. Folk style, freestyle, Greco. So the Wichita area produces a lot of quality kids. But then you got Western Kansas, and Western Kansas, those guys, you don't see a lot of them in the spring and the summertime, but boy, can they wrestle come winter. So, it's kind of interesting demographic across the state.
Yeah. Just want to close it out with something. We're trying to get a good wrestling story from everybody. So give us a weird wrestling story.
All right. So I needed a little bit of help with this one, and Whitson gave me a heads up, reminded me of a funny story from when we were in college. So we were wrestling at the Dinker Open, which is an open at Central Missouri. It's the second one of the year. And this was after I had kind of come back to Central and I was getting myself back into form. So we're in the backside of the tournament, and I'm itching to go out and keep climbing through the backside, try to finish as high as I can. And this kid, I can't be sure where he's from. I'm not totally remembering it correct, but I think he was from a JUCO. And he comes up to me as I'm warming up before the match, and he's like, "Hey, bro, what's your name?" And I tell him, and he's like, "We're getting ready to wrestle each other." I was like, "All right, sweet." He's like, "Here's the deal. I don't feel very good, kind of banged up, but my coach is making me wrestle. So I'm going to throw this match." And I mean, kind of stymied me there for a second. I had never had anyone do this before. So I didn't really know how to react. I didn't know if he was playing possum or he was trying to get me to let my guard down and then he's going to, I don't know, come at me. So I was like, "Okay, what's that mean?" And he's like, "Well, I mean, you're going to pin me." And I was like, "Okay." And he's kind of walking away and I was like, "How's this going to go?" And he just kind of turned around and looked at me and he said, you'll know when." Like, when the time is right, I was just going to know that he was ready for me to pin him. So I just took him down and turned him and pinned him. I guess I did know. I guess I didn't. But it was one of the weirder things that's happened to me in competition for sure.